Russell Wilson is gone. The Denver Broncos have informed him that they will be releasing him at the start of the new league year on March 13th. Look, here's the deal. Russell Wilson might not be Hall of Fame, but his agent, Mark Rodgers, is definitely Hall of Fame. On Russell Wilson's first contract extension, his agent made him the second highest paid player in the league. On his next contract, his agent made him the highest paid player in NFL history and got the Seahawks to give him a no trade clause, which is something Seattle had never done before because it was actually a policy for them that they don't put no trade clauses in the contracts. And then when Russell Wilson got to Denver, Mark Rodgers got the Broncos to give Wilson a brand new contract with $161 million in guaranteed money before Wilson had played a single snap for them. By the way, did you know that NFL agents can only make 3% of the contract? So on that $161 million deal, Mark Rodgers got $4.3 million, which is a good payday, don't get me wrong, but I do feel like maybe it should be closer to 10%. I don't know. I'm greedy like that. There are two things we need to talk about here with Russell Wilson. First, what's next for Russell Wilson? Well, on a personal level, it's pretty obvious, right? He can finally put his house on the market because we all know that he wasn't selling, right? He thought he was going to stay in Denver, right? Yeah, I got it, Russ. It wasn't technically on the market because you were hosting private showings, but dude, come on. But on the level that us football addicts actually care about, where is Russell Wilson going to play next year? And that's something that Wilson's actually allowed to figure out right now. Because he's been informed that he's going to be released on March 13th, he's actually allowed to talk to other teams now. Now, because of the guaranteed money in Russell Wilson's contract, he can sign to a very team-friendly deal this season. His contract with the Broncos includes offsets. Now, if you don't know what that means, don't worry. Professor Mike's got you. Class is in session. Can we have class outside? No. Okay, so because the Broncos owe Russell Wilson $39 million in guaranteed money on a contract that includes offsets, let's say, for example, that Russell Wilson signs with the Falcons for $1 million. That would mean that the Broncos have to pay Russell Wilson $38 million next year, and the Falcons have to pay Russell $1 million next year. So basically, whatever team Russell signs for, the Broncos got to pay the difference between whatever they agree to and $39 million. Now, the only way around that is if whatever team Russell signs to, if they were to offer Russell a contract that was worth more than $39 million, in which case the Broncos thank their lucky stars, pray to every God up in heaven, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because that would let them off the hook. But don't get your hopes up, because if a GM offered Russell Wilson more than $39 million, they'd get fired in about 45 seconds. But the cool thing for Russell Wilson is that he can take a league minimum contract for year one, since the Broncos are going to pay him $39 million, or it's going to be up to $39 million, no matter what. Russell can just play for cheap and let his new team save a ton of cap money in year one. And in year one, they can go out and get every free agent they want. They can upgrade the offensive line. They can spend all of their money and picks on putting things around Russell and build a super team super quick. Super team. Like, imagine if the New England Patriots, who have the second most cap space in the league and have the third overall draft pick, imagine if they sign Russell Wilson to a deal that includes maybe just $1 million on the first year. Maybe years 2 and 3 escalate, but let's say that the first year is just $1 million. That would mean they could spend all of their remaining cap money putting things around Russell for this season, and it would mean that they could use the number 3 overall pick to get Marvin Harrison Jr., a wide receiver that's going to be a threat for years to come. They can spend the rest of their picks the same way they're going to spend their cap space, putting weapons around Russ, maybe upgrading the defense a little bit, but it was already a pretty solid defense last year. The Patriots could quickly become a good team overnight in year one of the Gerard Mayo era. Look, by this point, you've already heard sports media refer to a few teams that Russell Wilson should go to. You've been hearing it for the last few weeks. You've heard the Atlanta Falcons. You've heard the Pittsburgh Steelers. You've heard the Las Vegas Raiders. You've heard the New York Giants, because by rule, sports media has to reference a New York team at least once every 5 minutes of airtime, even if that team doesn't technically reside in New York, because they play in frickin' New Jersey. And you might have heard Russell Wilson back to the Seahawks as a funky rumor. That's just because anybody who suggests that forgets that bombshell report from a year ago that Russell Wilson tried to get Seahawks general manager John Schneider fired before he was traded away. Yeah, I don't think John Schneider's signing Russell Wilson ever again. Well, look, I'm not disagreeing with two of those first three. The Falcons and the Raiders, those both make a ton of sense to me. The Steelers, there's been reports that they're actually trying to make it work with Kenny Pickett, so it wouldn't surprise me if they go conservative and stick with the guy they got. But let me throw two more at you that I haven't been hearing so much about. What about the Buccaneers? Reportedly, the Buccaneers did offer Baker Mayfield a contract, but he hasn't signed it yet, which could mean that Baker's actually looking to test the market. Let's assume the Buccaneers offered Baker a contract worth an average of $33 million a year. But then he goes, yeah, that sounds good, but I want to test the market just in case I can get up to 40. Well, if you're Tampa, maybe you take offense to that and you go, you know what? Fine. We'll sign Russell Wilson to a 3-year deal. First year is $1 million. Second year is $35 million. Third year is $45 million. Now for Russell, that would average to right around $40 million a year. But for Tampa, that actually only costs them right around $27 million a year on average. So it's a win-win for both sides. And that should especially be concerning to Baker Mayfield, because once you start comparing Russell Wilson to Baker Mayfield from last year, and you really take a look at the stats, you have to factor in that Russell Wilson played 2 less games than Baker. And yeah, Baker had more passing yards. Baker had more passing touchdowns, but he only had 2 more passing touchdowns than Russell Wilson. And Wilson had a better completion percentage, had a better rating, and threw 2 less interceptions. And Russell Wilson beat Baker Mayfield in every single rushing stat. So I'd actually make the argument that Russell Wilson had a better season than Baker Mayfield, despite playing for a worse team. So the Buccaneers could get the guy coming off of a better season that's historically been a better player for an average of $6 million less per year. Now, what's the other team that I want to throw at you? Well, a team that's in a very similar situation, the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings and Kirk Cousins don't have a deal yet, and Kirk Cousins is likely going to be the highest sought-after quarterback free agent, which means he's going to be pricey. For the same numbers I was throwing around for the Buccaneers, I'd say Minnesota could pay those numbers to Russ. And once again, you get a high-quality player who's not coming off of an Achilles injury for a lot less money. All right, now what's next for the Denver Broncos? Well, as I said in a video that I made the other day, I think they've got to go for something that's low risk, high reward, like Mac Jones or Zach Wilson maybe, because these players aren't going to cost too much in trade assets, and they're not going to cost too much on contracts because they're both on rookie deals. I think you got to make a move for one of those type of players, because Denver's going to have no money for the next 2 years, essentially. They're going to have to really work hard to work around the $85 million in dead cap they're incurring from Russell Wilson. Yes, they can spread that 85 over the next 2 years, but as it currently stands, they're negative $16 million for this year. So the Broncos are going to have to really do some cap gymnastics in order to field the team by week 1. Look, at the end of the day, the Broncos organization has been dysfunctional since Peyton Manning left after winning the Super Bowl in 2015. But this is really an all-time low. Getting Russell Wilson cost the Broncos Noah Fant, Drew Lock, Shelby Harris, Charles Cross, Boye Mafe, Tyreek Smith, Tariq Young, Derek Hall, $161 million, and they got nothing to show for it. And if that doesn't sting bad enough, in their first game following the trade and sign for Russell Wilson, they lost to the Seattle Seahawks, the team that they traded all that to. And I do think it adds another level of dysfunction when you consider the season that Russell Wilson just had, and you're choosing to eat $85 million instead of giving him one more go at it. Instead of giving him one more season. Look, it might be a tough couple of years for the Denver Broncos for financial reasons, for Sean Payton, who I do think is a winner of a head coach. I think that if you give him enough time, he will be able to build something there. But it's going to be tough for a little bit. I guess it's a good thing that they don't play in an increasingly tough division.